So, ladies and gentlemen, today on Sports File, we're taking a very interesting look at probably the best coach in NHL history, Scotty Bowman. But it's going to be very specific talk about his years in the Montreal Canadiens minor system, St. Louis Blues, and the Montreal Canadiens up until the 1979 season. The reason why I'm doing this is because there couldn't be a podcast long enough to cover all the successes of Bowman's career as a championship coach and developer and management for different teams throughout the years. So we're going to talk specifically about how the road of Scotty Bowman's career took him to St. Louis and then Montreal. Now, Bowman, who was born in the great city of Verdun, Quebec, Canada, on September 18, 1933, he was a minor hockey star until, unfortunately, he suffered a fractured skull resulting from a slash by future Canadian Jean-Guy Talbot and his playing aspirations. But he decided to cross over as a coach as a 23-year-old for the Ottawa Junior Canadiens in the Old Quebec Junior Hockey League. Now, 2 years later, the team, which was coached by Bowman and managed by future Montreal Canadiens GM Sam Pollock, won the Memorial Cup in 1958. Now, soon after, he moved into coaching job with the Peterborough Petes of the OHL, or Ontario Hockey Association, which was the Montreal Canadiens junior affiliate at the time. He had some very successful years with the Petes. A lot of people believe that that really established his great winning attitude and player development style. And Bowman, when expansion came, he saw an opening and he moved on to the NHL in 1967 with a St. Louis Blues expansion team as an assistant coach to Lynn Patrick, who was coach and manager. Now, the St. Louis Blues at the time had a lot of former Montreal Canadiens, NHLers, different top players like Jacques Plante, Glenn Hall, and he had a very, very defensive style, which became more apparent in the 1990s, where some teams mimicked the defensive-offensive style that Bowman kind of brought forth. He couldn't score many goals, but on defense they were best, and he made 3 straight NHL finals in those years. Now, when Patrick started slowly with the Blues, Bowman took over the coaching range at age 34, which is quite young for an NHL head coach. Usually back then, head coaches had 20, 30 years of experience in their 50s and 60s, what they call team players for many years. Now, the Blues, who had the Plager brothers, of course, Red Bearson, some strong youth and veteran core, when they made the finals in the first 2 years of existence, the first 2 years, 68 and 69, they lost to Montreal. And, of course, 1970, they lost to Boston in that famous series where Orr hit the game winner flying through the air, tripped up by Noel Picard in 1970. Now, Bowman remained the manager coach for St. Louis when Lynn Patrick, finally gave away to him. He continued to the 1970-71 season. Now, according to published reports, he had some heavy disagreements with team ownership, and he felt a change was needed. I think St. Louis made a big mistake by not keeping Bowman, but it was Montreal's gain. Now, in the 1971-72 season, Bowman took over as head coach. He tried Claude Ruel and the Al McNeil, who Henry Richard called it as incompetent in the 1971 season. Montreal needed a guiding hand, and Bowman was there to guide that team as best he could. Now, although the Canadiens were defending champions from 1971, a lot of people felt that 1972 was going to be a rebuilding year. And remember, this was Dryden's first full year with Montreal. And a lot of people thought Bowman was a great replacement for Al McNeil because not only was he bilingual, he could relate to any player on the team because he was part of the Montreal system before and he knew Sam Pollock's ways of getting it done. Now, in 1972, they lost in the first round of the playoffs, but 1973, that was Bowman's first cup. Now, under Bowman's tutelage, they continued to make the playoffs. 74 and 75, they lost to the Rangers and Buffalo, respectively. But by the 1976 season, they were ready to be the dynasty, the last actually Montreal Canadiens dynasty of the modern generation. Now, guiding Montreal from 76 to 79, Bowman won 4 consecutive cups with a very talented squad that include Schott, Lemaire, Lafleur, Robinson, Mahovlich, Dryden, Gainey, Larocque, Savard, Lapointe. Tremendous talent. Now, this is where the criticism of Bowman came in, because Montreal had great success. I think they only lost a total of it was like 30 or 31 games in a regular season between 76 and 78. A lot of people said, how good of a coach is Bowman, where he just has to put Schott, Lemaire, Lafleur, Robinson, Savard in the power play and Dryden in it. But I mean, to keep all the egos in check, to keep all the Montreal Canadian media in check, was a hard job. I don't think Bowman ever got the respect he was due when he coached Montreal, especially those last 4 years when he won the cup. The media in Quebec especially was very hard on him. The book, Ken Dryden's The Game, doesn't really expand on Bowman's coaching style, only talked about the superfluous practices and stuff like that. Claude Ruel was still around as kind of a secondary coach, but he, especially Anglophone and Francophone players, any problems he had in the dressing room, he took care of himself. Bowman would take care of their business. Now, the big falling out with Montreal, and maybe it's tied into Jacques Lemaire, felt he was being disrespected as well, when Sam Pauly dropped as general manager of the Habs in 1978, which led to the nondescript Irving Grundman being hired. Bowman felt left out. He should have been made GM, in my opinion. He had the qualifications, bar none. Lemaire felt a little bit left out. He fell out of the loop, and some of the Francophone players basically were wondering, why was Bowman not selected, where it was a known factor. Irv Ungerman was not really somebody who could motivate a lot of players. If I tell a Montreal Canadiens fan in 2019 that Bowman was passed over GM for someone that basically nobody even couldn't pronounce their name or knew their background, you say, what happened there? Did Bowman see it as a slight? Was he pushed out? Don't know. He went on to the Sabres soon after, but he ended his tenure with Montreal as the second highest winning rate in Canadiens history after the great Toe Blake. Now, the players on his tutelage have gone on to great coaching and development careers through the years, especially Bob Gainey, Larry Robinson, and the great Jacques Lemaire I talked in previous podcasts. But the question is, amongst the media at the time, was Lemaire and Bowman leaving connected? Because Lemaire didn't resign. Was Bowman basically looking for new climbs? Could he run a team? And that's what happened. He had a chance to coach the great Sabres with Joel Perreault in Buffalo. He reinvigorated that franchise, and the only reason I think Buffalo never won the cup during his years, that there were one or two players away, just like Toronto is right now, because Toronto's cup aspirations are kind of limited this year because they don't have that final one or two players to go over the hump. By the time he got to Pittsburgh, he helped the team win their Stanley Cups. And great success as well with Detroit, with Team Canada, unparalleled Chicago, as a developer. But Scotty Bowman, that period by the time he went with the Blues and came with Montreal, was sort of like there was too much success for him, and people basically didn't really appreciate if he was the main reason or he just surrounded by enough of great players. Any team can be great. Dallas Cowboys through the years had a great team, but couldn't get over the hump. Talking about the Landry years, you needed additional players or additional momentum. I really think Bowman, if he's not the greatest head coach in NHL history, I'd like to see people show on paper to me who's better. I'm not talking 16 league. I'm not talking the current association. We have coaches of longer tenure. We have coaches, of more of a brains than Bowman. But you look at his record. Everything he touches, turned to gold. When you say Scotty Bowman, it means basically someone that's a winner. Nobody can say Scotty Bowman's a loser because he's won at every level in the NHL. Now, he's a great individual, a great humanitarian. Everybody knows his family. He's very dedicated to his extended family and friends. But Jacques Lemaire told me something very interesting about Scotty Bowman. He said, you knew what you got with Scotty. You could talk to him. He know what players to play. like he never really benched anybody, to my memory, maybe for 5 minutes, and that was it. He never played head games. But like I said, the media in Quebec didn't really like him because, as we say in our business, familiarity breeds contempt. So on this great morning, again, we're taping for Cummings Brothers and Reductic, and Carlton County, a big Montreal Canadiens fan, and I got an idea for this column from my brother, from another mother, Darren Doucette. I love Darren to death, and Darren asked me to do this, and Darren's a big studier of NHL history, and he basically asked me to do this to inform the younger podcast listeners out there what Scotty Bowman did before he became kind of the grandparent of the NHL. Scotty Bowman at one time was the go-to guy for success in the NHL. Not Don Cherry, not Fred Shero. He was the guy and still is the man. So on this great morning, keep your stick in the ice and have a great day. Take it easy.